This meeting is being recorded.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to another Three Nation Dementia Working Group webinar. We're all very happy to be here with you this morning. My name is Martina, and I'm a member of the steering group at Three Nations Dementia Working Group. The dementia I live with is posterior cortical atrophy, also known as PCA. PCA affects the back of the brain. Now, this is my first chair of a webinar, so please be kind to me. Today's theme is accommodation with independence. This is a far-reaching topic and one I believe is not as tame as it sounds and can involve some controversy. For example, I know of several people who, when they were given their diagnosis, they were promptly told that despite living a good and safe life, that as they lived alone, they would have to go into some kind of care. In one particular case, the person with the diagnosis was told by his GP to attend a local care home, which included daycare, so that when the time came, he would be familiar with it. As he sat throwing a ball back and forth saying his name, he decided that this was not for him and that he still had a life to live. He went on to take advantage of a university programme called How to Live Well with Dementia. He says it was the best thing he ever did, and he's still in his own home now. Whilst carrying out some research, I came across this segment of a statement, and whilst it sounds great, it will be interesting to hear how much it does in fact fit in with our own speakers this morning, and also for those whose experience has been completely different by actively being discouraged to remain in their own home because of their diagnosis. The quality of life for someone living with dementia is affected by where and how they live. The Prime Minister's Challenge on Dementia 2020, bracketed 2015, states that by 2020, we wish to see an increased number of people with dementia being able to live longer in their own homes when it is in their interest to do so, with a greater focus on independent living. End of statement. Often it is too easy to talk the talk when it is evidence of walking the walk we want to see. It appears there is a huge void and lack of communication post-diagnosis of practical support other than suggesting the easy option. I'd like to take this moment to remind you all that our webinars are co-designed, produced and delivered by people living with dementia. But of course, not forgetting James in the back room, keeping the tech working and the webinars flowing. As always, we have an expert panel who help and contribute to the webinar, and they will introduce themselves shortly. But we have three lovely ladies, Jennifer, Sheila and Kirsty, and we couldn't be outdone by the smashing Stan. These webinars rely on you, our audience. For me, these webinars are reminiscent of chapters in a book. They demonstrate through lived experience a whole story unfolding, the twists, the turns, the challenges, the days when you feel you are pushing a pea up a hill with your nose. And who knows, one day when dementia is truly recognised by all for what that it will be a #1 bestseller, the disease that everyone will acknowledge and want to know and learn about. You, our audience, also have a great role to play in these chapters. We need your comments, responses and questions. You can give these via the text boxes, which you will find at the bottom of your screen. Please use the text boxes to ask questions. If you raise your hand, we will not be able to see you. The text boxes will be monitored for questions, so we will be able to respond to some as we go along, but not when a panelist is speaking. It would also be helpful to us if you let us know who you are and your role so we better can understand our audience. We cannot deal with individual queries, but we'll try to signpost via the text box where individual queries may be dealt with. So without further ado, I'll hand you over to our first panelist, who is the lovely Jennifer.
I'm Jennifer. I have been diagnosed with dementia for 12 years. We're all different, but even with a diagnosis, we all need to live somewhere and retain some independence. And when I was first diagnosed, my husband expected me to carry on just as usual. which was good to a certain extent, but increasingly I could not cope. We had a large house and always had people staying, waifs and strays, people coming for meals, people in need of help. We loved helping people, but I wouldn't know who these people were because I don't recognize people. And as for cooking for them, well, was I meant to do that? In the end, my husband couldn't cope. And he said, we are moving to a dementia inclusive community. We inspected dozens of them, but I didn't want to leave my lovely house and garden and my friends in church, but I realized I had to. We presumed, my husband and I, that we'd thought it all through, planning for the future. We thought. The place we went to had a separate dementia unit ready for later. And I learned a great deal from visiting there, making friends, even made a bit of a difference. There was a separate nursing home for when one needed nursing care. It seemed to work well to start with, but we had to pay for any help, even being taken somewhere in the building. So one was reluctant to ask for help. So residents solved the problem by buying electric buggies long before it was medically necessary. And they were everywhere. We were disabled. But wherever we are, we need a support network to enable us rather than disable us. And this often involves family and friends. And I don't think it's fair to assume that friends and relatives will always help. We need to give them opportunity to draw their boundaries. As a GP, I saw how often constant assumed help was bitterly resented. Not that they told anyone, of course. In emergencies, of course, we expect help, but we need to think about the routine stuff. There's always social services, but some people feel that's intrusive. Home agencies. Well, I had delivered meals, simple 2-minute microwavable things from Wiltshire Foods and Pasty Box. It was wonderful, simple because I couldn't cook anymore. I had Alexa to remind me about my medication. Activities were organised by the residents. I got so tired from running the groups, the clubs, the library. It was much appreciated, but there was minimal staff support. And then COVID upset everything. We were isolated, no visiting allowed anywhere. It was a prison. And I was forgetting to eat, and nobody checked. It became dangerous. I was setting things on fire. I was even poisoning myself with household cleaning materials. Seriously, at times. Not having enough supervision. So my son, who lives in Ukraine, and I agreed I needed more comprehensive care. So I gave up my large flat with a proper kitchen and moved to a much smaller flat that had a kitchenette with just a fridge and a microwave. Safe for me. The cleaning and the laundry was done every week. And we have to sign up to some kind of meal deal so they can make sure that we have at least one cooked meal a day. And if one didn't, they came to find out why one hadn't come or brought it along to one's place. It was perfect for me. The staff multitask and become friends. We have a dementia unit and a nursing unit, but they're accessible and they're integrated. I'd never seen this anywhere else. And the activities, which run every day, morning and afternoon, not compulsory, are run entirely by the staff, who will join us for meals or if appropriate. And it works so well. It keeps us all socially engaged. I'm sure it keeps people functioning well so much longer. And during COVID, they created social bubbles. They did not isolate people. And there's not a single electric buggy in this place, even though there are people who've had strokes or motor neurosis. If one is ill, the nursing staff will go after we have nurses here in your own flat. You don't have to go to any nursing home. And they'll pop in and sit with me. I had really bad COVID. I was really ill. They kept me out of hospital with 24-hour nursing care and popping in to sit with me with a smile on their face in their free time even. To pay for that care, it's all included. We even have Keep Fit. People in wheelchairs even come along. We have games, films, talks, arts and crafts. They enable us to do things if we want to. I gave up so much moving here, but I've gained so much more. You can get taken to any NHS appointments we need, it's all included. But even so, I couldn't survive without my computer, my backup brain, and Wi-Fi everywhere. And I was always getting lost. I tell staff where I'm going and I can be tracked on my phone. And I have, of course, eye towels and things like that on everything. And Alexa reminds me to take my medication, reads books to me, because I can't even remember what book I'm meant to be reading. And I can't remember where I got up to. So she solves all those problems, plays my favorite music, answers my questions. I love technology, and it helps me to remain independent.
Thank you, Jennifer. What a lovely, lovely story there, and a lot of positivity in that as well, which is absolutely delightful to hear. And I would have thought pretty inspiring for other people to hear it too. So thank you very much for sharing that. And I'm sure there's going to be some comments and questions about it in a little while. Okay, now to our second speaker, the smashing Stan. Over to you, Stan.
Thank you, Jenny. I'm Stan. I'm 79. I live on my own. I've had diagnosed with dementia 2014, the early onset of Alzheimer's. But basically, I've coped very well considering I've got the so-called dreaded disease. I was fortunate enough where I'm living now, already moved into here, which is a purpose-built accommodation for people over 55. It's a small complex, and it's actually built up, they tagged on to the end of a council estate, and it's in what was used to be the pub car park at the top of the road. Unfortunately, two taxi firms that used the car park for the business had a fallout, and they set fire to the pub, burnt it down, so the place became vacant. So now this scheme was built by Riverside Housing, and it's shared accommodation, in as much as I only own 75% of the place. The Riverside own the other 25%. It's a bonus in that sense, because I don't have to worry about my outside repairs, anything like that, gardening, window cleaning. That's all comes in with the service charge. The place comes with a built-in shower, handrails, everything you need for somebody that's getting on a bit in years, even to a telecare line. Yeah, I too embrace technology in as much as, yeah, I said, okay, I live on my own. Well, I don't technically. There's 4 women in my life, and I will explain that in a sense of, one of them is Alexa 1. She's in the living room. Alexa 2 lives in the kitchen. Not you, I talked to the other one. See the chip in. And Alexa 3 is in the bedroom. And the other one, oh, there we go. She's down here.
I don't know that.
I know you don't know it. See what I mean? It's stupid. That's my sat nav. I've no longer drive due to my eyesight, not my dementia, but I have now adapted that to go onto my mobility scooter, and just in case I get lost. But those are my aids for living with the illness. Shared accommodation, or shared ownership, I should say, is easy because you don't have any worries. All the repairs are taken care of. Nigel was relating a couple of days ago about being locked out of his place. I actually got locked in, my lock failed. I just rang the place up, a locksmith came out, fixed the lock, and that was it, away you go. So you don't have the hassle. It's less to worry about. It was ideal during COVID because I'm quite happy being with my own company and my fish. But I didn't have to mix with people, and I did stay in for the full 2.5 years, apart from one visit to the hairdressers for a haircut, and another one was for a hospital appointment. But again, it's ideal. Give you an idea about it. I've not had any heating on since November last year, because it stays around 19 to 22 degrees constant in winter and summer. So that's another bonus. Yeah, I've got good neighbours. They're all elderly. I should have added, I actually live in Liverpool, which is not too bad, seeing as I come from Manchester. But people that are around me are all elderly, which is an ideal situation. I believe back in the day, this estate, when it was first built, was plagued with a lot of scallywags and what have you. Now it's totally different. They've all grown up and moved off. But I've got handily placed for shops and things like that, bus routes. For me, it's ideal. I've just adapted it more so for me now, living with the dementia. I mean, I've got my computer set up. I run most of my stuff from there. I do all my shopping online from there. The only exercise I get really is when I get a delivery, because I'm a bit reluctant to go shopping at the minute. So it's up and down stairs, 19 trips or something like that, just carrying shopping up and down. But there's not much more to say other than I can recommend shared ownership if you're in that situation. That's my lot.
That's lovely, Stan. And again, it's another inspirational example of living on your own and how well you can manage, and how one can make great use of technology. And I think it's fantastic that you've got, you know, four ladies in your life. I really do. And I have to say, I absolutely love the sat-nav tip. What an amazing use to actually recycle it onto your scooter.
Yeah.
Absolutely fantastic. Brilliant. Well done, you.
I only use that because obviously quite often routes I go out on my scooter, they might have roadworks or something like that, and there's nothing worse than having detour somewhere and you don't know the area, even though you live in the area.
Yeah,
that's the reason why I adapted that.
But I think it's such an intelligent use of some kit that you no longer had use for. You know, many people would have said, well, that, you know, give it to the grandkids or recycle it, but you've recycled it in a really positive way. So brilliant.
That does have its downside, because I was taught as an apprentice, never throw away what you can't make. Believe you me, you wouldn't like to see some parts of my flat. I very seldom throw anything away. Everything has a use, no matter what.
I bet you're a string man as well then. Lots of bits of string rolled up.
Sorry?
I said, I bet
Oh,
you're
no, not string, elastic bands. I made one of those elastic band balls.
That's lovely, Stan. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Yeah. Nigel?
Yeah, there's a lot of love out there in the text box for you all. Thank you, Jennifer, for a contribution. There's a specific question for Stan from Jean Hart. Stan, do you know if Riverside operates countrywide?
I know they certainly do in the northwest. I don't know about down south. They've got quite a few schemes in Manchester, some up in Preston. But again, I can touch on the fact of, if you've got double glazing, that's got to be renewed every 10 years. Well, that is not an on cost to me. That's Riverside's problem, and they will renew it free of charge. So again, this is the type of bonus with shared ownership that you get. The maintenance problems are removed.
Okay. Thanks, Dan. That's all from me.
Thanks, Nigel.
I was just going to share that I've just looked on Riverside's website. If it's Riverside Housing Group, then it does look like they're in they are in both England and Scotland, so they're definitely nationwide. It doesn't have a list of the different places, but yeah, if you look on the website.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Kirsty. Okay, now to our third speaker.
Martina, before we move on, there's one question here from Joy.
Yeah.
And it's for the whole panel, really. How does one find a good place to live?
Ooh. That perhaps is as long as a piece of string, isn't it? Yeah, well, we've heard from both Jennifer and Stan, and it would appear that two of these options are really good options to actually approach. perhaps also it's about researching the areas that you think you might like to live in, but also to take into account how far are you going from family, friends, all those sort of personal relationships. And if you are on your own, do you look at it as your world is your lobster?
Yeah. For me, it was sort of desperation stakes, because I was in a flat where I was paying a rent which was around about £2,500 to £3,000 a year. With this, I will now get, well, the dependents will, when I pass away, they will at least get a return, because I've got the property, the money's in the property. With a flat that you're paying a yearly rent for, that's gone, it's dead money. So that's another consideration that you've got. Certainly if you're downsizing, is better to take out a mortgage and have some collateral in the form of a property.
I'm in the process of, I mean, I believe that you choose the place to live which gives you the maximum opportunity to enjoy your life to the fullest. In other words, that's good. If you need good transport requirements, then it's there. If you need good support, it's there. But the problem is that we grow familiar with our neighborhoods, don't we? And living with dementia makes it very difficult to make those adjustments without any help. Though some people do change quite, now and again. And I don't think there's any sort of formula to it. I guess it's, what feels right for you. You know when you look at something that it'll fit. I would only change my location if I could manage the house, or if the house burnt down or something, or I required a more increased level of support. That's the major consideration. And I'm trying out, because I live alone, I mean, at some stage I will require some kind of residential care. So I'm trying out nursing homes. In fact, I'm trying out one next week. Sign myself in for a weekend to see what it's like. I've done 4 up to now, and I haven't found one that has a bar, so that's a problem. But other than that.
That's what I was going to ask to some of the panelists, is whether you've done some sort of priority kind of checklist before you've relocated. Have you done, did you have a list, like these are the top 3 things that or these are the 4 essential things that I need wherever I'm going to go? Did you have some sort of priority list?
Oh, me?
No.
Yeah, it had to have good transport links. It had to be it had to be sort of quiet. I live in a very quiet area at the moment. It had to be quiet. And secondly, not too many surprises, everything in a straight line, so to speak, which, and as regards the residential care, well, that's all about maintaining my individuality within the care, and, as a person. Jennifer, sorry, you had your hand up.
I was only going to say, it needs to be a place where one is enabled, not disabled. And that, I think, is what I was talking about, wasn't it? And we didn't realize the first place we went to that people were disabled.
Yes.
Only when I'm in this place where one is enabled that one understands the difference between the two.
Yeah. I think if you're enabled, then you also become empowered, don't you?
Yeah. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, any move into residential settings should just be a change of postcode, really. It shouldn't impact your life too much, but let's wait and see. But I'm going to shut up now. Let the webinar go on. Sorry.
Okay.
Not at all, Nigel. So we'll turn to our second to last lovely lady, penultimate lady, Sheila. And let's hear from you, my darling.
My situation is similar to Stanley's, really. I'm in it's called an extra care complex. We didn't move here because of me. We moved here because of Paul. Our house was too large and he just wasn't managing the stairs at all. But in fact, it's pretty well ideal for me. There are carers on hand. and you have to pay for any care that you use. So I get a morning call and an evening call to remind me of medication and to make sure that I'm okay. It feels very safe, which I think is very important when you have dementia. It's in a very it's in a village, and it's there's a real village community. And also it's attached, it's not a care complex on its own, it's attached to the village centre. So there's a restaurant downstairs, and anything that goes on in the village goes on in the village centre. So U3A classes, there's an assembly room, it all goes on here. So you can get as much involved in that as you like, or not if you don't like. But there's no sense of isolation, which I like very much indeed. The thing, and it seems that I feel almost ungrateful for saying this, but I find the care a little bit intrusive, in the sense that nobody ever thinks they need to knock before they come in. The door just opens and there's a carer there. And because they're so good, it seems a tiny thing to quibble about. But I do feel intruded on by the door just opening and someone's there. It's taken away a bit of my privacy, and I'm not madly keen on that. But it's a small price to pay for everything else that's here. Like Stanley, all the major things, repairs are done as part of the service charge. Sort of redecoration, I deal with myself. But apart from that, everything, window cleaning, major repairs are all done by Housing 21. So for us, it was for Paul before he died, and for me, it was a very good move. We had to downsize enormously, which meant getting rid of a large number of books, and I still miss them. I chose all the wrong ones to give away, and I'm always looking for one that's already gone. But that's really a small price to pay for what we have here.
That's lovely, Sheila. Another inspiring story to feel that actually there are communities out there that people can feel happy in. And your comment on the door opening, I would agree entirely with you that if I was in that situation, I would definitely find it intrusive. But unlike you, I most likely would say something about it. But as you say, for everything that you get in return, you know, is it a small price to pay? As a matter of interest, what sort of size is all of your complexes? What sort of size are they? How many people do they have?
In this one, there are 60 apartments, and you have to be over 55 to move here. And I think this is about the average size for a Housing 21 complex.
Yeah. What about you, Stan?
Ours is a mixture. It's mainly bungalows, but we've got 2 blocks of flats, 4 flats in each block. And as I say, it's a purpose-built unit. I actually went for the bungalow next door, but unfortunately, the lady that lived here, her nephew had moved her down to the bungalow, so I finished up getting this. That it wasn't sort of by choice, but the area is still the same, and I like it. Yeah.
And Jennifer, how about yourself? You're on mute.
I'm not quite sure. I think about 50, but we also have quite a lot of people coming here on respite, you know, just for 2 weeks or something, or people coming just to stay for a while to see what it's like. So it's a bit fluid, but it's fine. I think about, 50.
Yeah, I think actually from the numbers that you've, the 3 of you have just spoken about, that's quite, it's not too few and it's not too many. It's a good mixture, and even you know, you get to know your neighbours and the people around you, even if it's not actually physically talking to all of them, you actually get to know the faces. So also that kind of raises an awareness if there's anybody about that you've never recognised before, or somebody looks a bit shifty as well, you know, and you've got a go-to place to be able to report that. That's absolutely brilliant. 3 lovely stories there. And yes, carry on.
one of the things that I find, it sounds a bit morbid to be thinking ahead, but people stay here until they die, so that end of life care is possible here. And I find that quite consoling, that I don't have to move. You know, should I be coming to the end of my life, should I develop another illness or whatever, that I can stay here, and you know, people come in, the Admiral nurses come in, Marie Curie nurses come in, and that's a very, I just feel very safe and content with that.
I can understand that, Sheila, because it's, in one sense, it's almost creating a stability, isn't it? And a lot of people that aren't in that kind of environment, or don't have that approach to life, can actually feel, when those things start to happen, it's a real shock. And when the families see it, it's actually a real shock. But what you're actually saying, you're growing into it. You know, for the next 30 years that you've got left in your life, Sheila, whatever it is, you're actually growing into it, and it's kind of, you're making it a way of your life. So it's not morbid, and I personally don't find it depressing at all. I think it's very, very heartfelt and very, very sensible. And I always find the word sensible boring, so you'll have to put your own take on another word for sensible. But that's absolutely lovely. Absolutely.
I'm not often called sensible, but
well, there's a first for everything, isn't there, Sheila? So, Mike, we can move to our final lovely lady, who is Kirsty, and she is from the policy team at the Alzheimer's Society. So, welcome to this webinar, Kirsty.
Hi everyone. Hope you're well. Thanks for having me today. Yeah, I was going to say sensible. I think the kind of the more I was going to say sexy term would be smart. It's more contemporary, I guess. So I would say smart. Making a smart move and stuff like that is probably better. So yeah, I've worked at the Society for around 5 years. I used to be in the directorate, which was called Community Engagement, which was disestablished in COVID. So that directorate, we were focused on dementia friends, dementia-friendly communities, and working with different sectors, such as housing, emergency services, financial services. We were a bigger team. We were around, there was about 10 of us there focused on the sector work alongside dementia-friendly communities and the Dementia Friends team. And when COVID hit, the directorate, like I said, was disestablished, but some positions were rescued and moved into different teams. So that sector work that team of 10 were doing moved into policy. And now there's myself and an officer who work to follow through some of that sector work, working to make those sectors more, well, not dementia friendly anymore, because that's the change. We're now evidence-based, as opposed to delivering dementia friends and working with them in a kind of soft way. We now work evidence-based, so we're really matching how areas within the sectors, specific themes within the sectors, such as housing with care, can impact on health and social care outcomes. So we pick out things that have strong evidence, and we try and make big change from government level and down to the local level. So the areas that we picked out, obviously housing comes into play at a really top, with the biggest links with health and social care outcomes for people affected by dementia. But we still have our hands in different pots, such as, like I said, emergency services, some aspects like going missing, Herbert protocol, things like that, where there is some evidence that it has an impact on reduction in harm to people affected by dementia. And energy, we're taught we can still look at that in regards to the cost of living, especially now. and areas like that. So when I came into the policy team after COVID, I took on housing significantly in that evidence-based way, and I joined the Dementia and Housing Working Group, which was originally set up by the National Housing Federation in 2008. So the Dementia and Housing Working Group aims to promote the contribution of the housing sector as a whole to improve the health and well-being outcomes for people affected by dementia. And it is a group that comprises of housing providers, such as some of the ones that you've mentioned, like Housing 21, McCarthy and Stone, professionals within the housing sectors, trade bodies, ourselves alongside researchers, representation from government or local government, and different kind of homes and care and repair agencies, and Department of Health can play a contribution as well. So this group has worked to deliver quite a few things, but one of the most significant one was the APPG report on dementia and housing, and that was launched by Lord Best. And it really covers how to get housing right despite having a long-term condition like dementia, to make sure that you'll be able to live a fulfilled life for as long as possible by getting housing right. So, and that kind of really touches on how it can postpone or even prevent the need for relocation into care homes, and just basically trying to really increase the independence, the choice and control of people affected by dementia through housing, and in turn reducing the health and social care costs on the other side as well. So the report is quite extensive. It covers about 40 different recommendations, but I'm mentioning it because it really covers everything that the group are concerned about. And this is kind of like the health and well-being aspect of people affected by dementia. So how we bring housing into health and social care. So they're joined up as almost like a chair. We say that it's got 3 legs: health, social care, and housing. And if one of those legs takes away, then the other 2 are not supported. So it's how we bring that in as an equal party to health and social care as housing, which I think initially it was when the NHS was established. But over the years, it's really been pushed apart, and they've been, like as we go into these siloed teams, housing has just been pushed apart, and further, it's been taken further away from health and social care. And now there's a big effort to try and it's going to take a big effort to try and bring it back into the equation. And when I mean that in practical terms, it's about where housing is considered at the point of diagnosis, for example, and the opportunities for offering people advice and guidance at the right time following a diagnosis, and for care records to be shared in the appropriate way, where housing professionals are not going in blind to people's houses when they're, for example, trying to adapt that home. They can see that person's been has a diagnosis as an initial point, which is actually not even taken into account sometimes. So the importance of sharing those records and making sure that health and social care and housing are joined up. As I mentioned, information and advice on housing is a very critical area that we're looking at. And this is about, like I said, it's really about giving people the right information at the right time in order for them to take control and have choice, have the biggest choice that they possibly can have, given the information. A lot of people affected by dementia, and to be honest, a lot of people, I should have said the general public, and as a whole, I think the awareness of housing with care provisions and stuff is still, and what housing with care, the government have over 50 terms for housing with care or specialist housing, supported housing, retirement housing, whatever you want to call it. They need to sort that terminology out. but that just leads to the lack of understanding about what it actually is. We've heard that some people actually think that extra care means extra care, more care than in a care home, which is not the case, as Sheila shared with us. So yeah, it's about that lack of information that we want to address. And we're also looking at the housing supply in general, what is actually on offer. Stanley's kind of like touched in on a really pivotal thing there, that actually having a good understanding and working with housing professionals that understand about your condition, what your needs are, and being able to match that up with the housing stock and see how we can actually move some capital into an appropriate setting through that shared ownership scheme. It requires people bringing their, the right professionals coming round and thinking about that individual in a personalised way in order to problem solve and think about, but only that can be done when you've got the right people in the right place, and they have to have that local level understanding of what's on offer. They have to have an understanding of the financial circumstances of that individual and what the needs of that individual and that wants of that individual is in order to make that change. So that joint up thinking, that problem solving, that awareness of the local housing supply is needed. But generally, we also just need more housing. We need far more retirement housing, and especially the mention of, like, Sheila and Jennifer, like how important getting that housing right can be. So if you're getting we know that there's going to be a shortfall of care homes, so we know that we definitely need more different types of housing care schemes, as well as the benefits that they offer, as opposed to going straight directly into a care home, especially in the worst case scenario at the point of crisis, which is never usually a great outcome. The other area we're looking at is been touched on, and that's adaptations and home improvements, and how local authorities can really support the 90% of people affected by dementia who want to live in their own home within the community, and how they do that by making sure that there is more readily available grants that are specifically recognising the need for low cost adaptations, is what we call it, but that includes assistive aid and aids in technology that can be financed as well through the Disabled Facilities Grant, which is the government's funding scheme to local authority for providing that assistance. So that's something we're looking at. And then there's also the general design that we're looking at, the general design of how homes are designed, increasing the accessibility standards across all new homes, for example, which is something that Alzheimer's Society and many others responded to on the government consultation to get the accessibility standard increased, but still has a long way to go in terms of making it accessible for everybody. And then, as mentioned by Nigel, the importance of the community and how the community is designed in terms of the transport links and access to green spaces, community areas, your retail spaces, everything like that, and how that is, in worst case scenario, the only option for you could be that there is a great housing scheme that meets all your priorities, but the only thing is you have to leave your local area, and you don't have any links to the places that you want to still interact with. So that's never going to be a good move for anyone, despite how well that housing scheme is going to be. So it's about getting the right community to support the right housing. And looking at the care management and in terms of the housing as well. Sheila's mentioned that it's kind of the invasive side of that housing care scheme, walking in without knocking, and that's something that's an aspect that we could be looking at as well, just in terms of how care can be improved within housing. And then, as mentioned, the many wonderful kind of things in the pipeline around assistive technology, and the things that are shared today in terms of like geofencing, as well about setting out boundaries across local areas so that an alarm can be triggered if somebody's leaving a certain area, so it gives them freedom to the extent that they feel that their safety is not at risk if they're going beyond that. And obviously Alexa and things like that, electric pill dispensers, there's a lot of things.
Here is an answer I translated from
Alexa,
goodapproach.net.
Oh, it's me, I did it.
Sorry.
PP.
Oh,
Stage
it's
greater
here.
than reinforced.
And then there's obviously the workforce that's been mentioned in the comments just now in terms of training up the workforce and the housing providers and making sure that they have a better understanding of dementia, alongside like especially things like meeting the needs of different communities such as LGBT communities and Black and ethnic minority people within the housing with care schemes and stuff like that. So yeah, those are the areas alongside legislation and research. Those are the things that the group have got their hands on and get their teeth into. So yes, so now as a group, we've always, with the work streams that we go forward with, we've always, such as the APPG report, we've always aimed to include people affected by dementia and make sure that they come first in terms of shaping that work stream, that piece of work. However, what we haven't done is actually involve people affected by dementia at the very point of actually deciding what we're going to prioritise and pick out the work streams going forward. So that's what we want to do now. We want to make sure that some of our members of the working group are people affected by dementia. So it's not us deciding what should be prioritised within the 40 recommendations that we have put together and co-produced with the people affected by dementia, but now we want their help to really decide what we should be focused on and what is going to have the biggest difference for people affected by dementia, what we should be driving forward for. So we're looking for members. What we're asking for is for the members to be interested in the field of housing, to be, like I said, to be predominantly involved in the planning aspect of that group, to ensure that they're, that the group are informed on what their viewpoints are around the priorities of the activity, and that the group should be driving forward. We have thought about, like what would be good for supporting that person to join as a member of the group. And we thought about ways that we could, and that's very much for conversation. Should you wish to join, we can discuss what would work for you. But some ideas that we have is that you could be paired off with someone like myself, and I'd be kind of member go-to person. And if you didn't feel comfortable coming to a meeting, or you wanted to contribute in a different way, like just one-to-one with me over the phone or through a Zoom call, we could do it that way, as opposed to going to a full-on membership meeting, or simply just having a pre-chat before the meeting, so that you feel comfortable sharing your views and ensured about what the meeting's going to cover beforehand. And then so like I said, the method of involvement would be tailored to you, and that could be both, like I said, through calls, written material. It could be written to write things down, and we can use email. But the main thing is to make sure that we have contribution and we're being led by people affected by dementia. And that covers what the ask on the dementia housing and working group. I'm just looking to see if there's any questions. Nigel, has anything come up from that?
Yeah, first off, this praise from lots of people, well, Jean Hart in particular, who says, wow, I hadn't realized the society has shifted in a way. Sounds more strategic. I feel so optimistic on how positive the work is. There's calls for any worker in housing to be culturally sensitive. and for the people sort of involved to be culturally curious as to what sort of house, because the housing of certain diverse communities, as you know, would be different. But I'm from a Romany background, so I'd like to go in I'd like to go back to caravan living. That's impossible, but so you'd have to build a house. My house to look like a caravan. Jean Hart asks, how do you maintain access of feedback from people living with dementia, and how can this inform your policies, development influence? I think you've answered that question, Kirsty, but would you like to put a little bit more to it?
Yeah, I mean, generally, I don't know if it's about the housing group or how we work at Alzheimer's Society, but Alzheimer's Society and how we develop policy is very much similar to what we're doing today. So I've been on groups with Sheila and Jennifer and Nigel, probably more than once, and Stanley. I'm aware of Stanley. If you don't remember me, I definitely remember you guys. And being so that's, we work very well with Dementia Voice to make sure that we're bringing the issues we think are important to people affected by dementia, and then they share their viewpoints, and that's exactly kind of how we want the dementia and housing group to be working, which is very much why I'm the member that's leading on this area, about bringing people affected by dementia to the very beginning, the very initial point of actually deciding what we should be working on, as opposed to we decide and then bring them into the specific work stream. So the involvement at the very beginning, just how we do it at Alzheimer's Society.
Nothing about us without us is a fairly good strapline.
Definitely.
I've got one question for the whole of the panel to see what you think of. Do you think we should be building houses for the future? In other words, should we be building houses now which are easily more adapted for needs of the population in the future, rather than undergo major building work on houses, for instance, a stair lift? I mean, it's quite easy to build houses now with wider staircases, with walk-in bathrooms, with walk-in showers as an option. Do you think we should be thinking that long way? Because people are living in one house for much longer. Stan, you're on mute.
I would have preferred the move to a dementia-friendly village rather than specific housing things. I think most modern houses, certainly even on council properties, the adaptations are already being built in as they're considered as necessities for normal living. But I would prefer a dementia village if I had to move anywhere from here.
Okay.
Yes, Jennifer.
I'm just being awkward, as I like often to be. There's a question that's been coming up twice, isn't it, about the technophobes? Sorry, it's nothing to do with housing, but it's come up several times about what you do with technophobes. We were talking about technology, I mean, you know, Alexa and all that kind of thing, and all the other things. And my experience during COVID, when I was in the place that disabled us, and we were all isolated in our prisons, I wasn't going to have that. So I decided to run Zoom groups. But of course, people with dementia can't cope with that, can they? But they can. I had some people who were on my side amongst the staff, and they would go along because there were lots of iPads floating around, which were provided by the management. No one ever did anything with them. And they would take them in and they would set them up. And they would join the group. And because of the benefit of the group, we did all kinds of things in the group, you know, different activities and things. They thought it was worthwhile overcoming that little hitch as to how to actually access it. So I do not believe that people with dementia stay technophobic if they are enabled to find out themselves that it's worth it because of how they feel when it does work.
Yes, Stan.
On the technology side of it, yeah, the biggest problem, certainly with the elderly, they're a bit scared. I mean, you get the first smartphone and they're terrified. They've got 500 odd pounds of the phone. They don't know how to use it. What we say to them is, okay, if you've got a granddaughter, grandson, get them to show you how to do it. You score double brownie points. They get to learn how to do the thing, and you bond in the family with somebody with dementia. I mean, I actually run along with another guy who's got Lewy body syndrome. We run a group for carers. So it's a bit of a misnomer, 2 people with dementia running a carers group. We do that twice daily. It works well. Yeah, it builds the community. Again, it's of necessity here in Liverpool, because I don't know whether you're aware, but Liverpool don't have the Alzheimer's Society as everybody else does. We only have a representative, and that's covering in Liverpool certainly 7,500 of us with some form of dementia. So again, it's more a form of peer support, but it does work.
That's lovely, Stanley. Thank you. Well, as we're starting to approach, sorry, Kirsty, did you want to say something?
Just in terms of the question that Nigel asked, in terms of what we should be building, just generally the thoughts are just everything. We should be adapting the current housing stock, because we know that the majority, over 95% of our current housing stock is not adapted. So that should be done right now, because generally there's not enough new housing to support to basically house everyone. So we need to be doing absolutely both at the same time. We need to be doing a lot more. Basically, we need to be doing about 50,000 new houses, retirement houses per annum, which we're nowhere close to. At the same time, we need to be adapting the current housing stock, because a lot of people don't want to be relocating to those new housing. Like I gave that example of when, okay, you've got a new housing provision that's outside of your current location. It's not going to be somewhere that you do want to move because you want to stay within maybe a central city location. So the issue is that there's no choice. So you wait upon crisis when you can't, when you've had a fall or whatever into your home and you have to relocate from your central location, and then your only option is to move out to a new housing scheme and leave that current setting, when that shouldn't be the case. You should be able to have your home adapted to allow you to live there for longer, if that's your choice, and then have the other option as well of having different housing choices as well. So it's absolutely both should be happening at the same time, just as much and a lot more of it.
Absolutely agree, but to a certain extent there is a chicken and an egg situation, is there? Because it is the housing stocks that are down, and it's also trying to persuade private constructors and the governments to put more money into more affordable housing, shared ownership, the whole kit and caboodle, really. So you've actually got the cost of adaptation. But if we go to what Stan has just said, which is if he had to leave his house, his preference would actually be to go to a dementia village. Now, as people are living longer, a lot of those strategies, people's strategies such as that should be taken into consideration. So so we're back to pushing this P up the hill, aren't we, really, and trying to get as many people on board so we can get it up to the top, so it free rolls down the other side. And that's the only way I can describe it, and that's how I feel about it. And I do think there should be more going into future construction, which is to do with dementia villages, which is you're not being written off. You're actually within a community you feel safe in, and you have a choice. So absolutely agree. And as we are now coming so close to time, I would actually like to say a great big thank you to all the panelists and all the participants this morning. We'll be taking our normal couple of weeks break, but our next webinar is on the 15th of November, and that's another thought-provoking subject called Walking on Eggshells. So we'd really look forward to seeing you at that one. And just quickly before we go, don't forget that the nominations are currently open for the 2023 Dementia Hero Awards. And that's whether you want to recognise an individual, group or organisation. Nominations for all categories do close on the Friday, the 18th of November. So have a good think about all those people and organisations out there. The awards will recognise winners that have people living with the condition at the heart of everything they do, that empower people with dementia, not just to shape, but to lead the change we all want to see. And also, you are all part of this webinar. So if you have any suggestions of topics or anything that you would like us to actually put forward and put out there, please get in touch. You can do it via Twitter at 3NDWG or the website, which has just come up on the chat box. Thank you all very, very much for this morning. It's been another great webinar, and thank you once again to our panelists. Bye-bye.
And thanks,
Bye,
Martina.
everyone.
Bye,
Bye.
everyone. Have a
Bye-bye.
great day.
If guys, you just want to hang on for a debrief?